everybody. Thanks for joining me here at Rolling Up My Sleeves. It's a beautiful day out here in the Canadian wilderness. You know, the dilemma. Do you cut big trees or do you leave them? Why would you leave them? And why would you cut them? Well, some people say that you leave them because they're, you know, in the case of this big giant red oak here above me, that's an amazing genetic strain that will repopulate the area with acorns and create amazing red oak trees in this area for years to come. If you look over my shoulder, there's another one back behind me, and this whole ridge is lined up with those. And boy, this one's a big one. Check this out. Might not look too big right now because there's really nothing to scale it beside, but it is, just walk it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's about 5 feet across. See my marks there. Now this tree has some issues, right? It's got some, I don't know if that's chaga. It's a little home for some kind of critters. Many a little animal have popped in and out of there. Lots of dead limbs on it. You know, you don't want to stand under here on a windy day. It'd probably be a bad thing. But what I'll show you about a tree like this, as beautiful as they are, and I don't have anything against big trees. I love them. You know, we do a lot of live edge milling and they're just beauties. This here, there's a lot of rot in it. Might not be the greatest for milling, but some people like to fill with epoxy, right? But ultimately what happens is, when I scan the area around this tree, and I'm looking, what do you guys notice? Lots of little tiny ones. Well, tiny trees, not lots. There's nothing really regenerating on the ground here. Everything that is growing, they're all ironwoods, which usually, you know, fill in this kind of an area where it's not getting a lot of sunlight because of that massive canopy that's there in the summer. Now, actually, this one's getting a little smaller because there's so much rot and death and decay in this tree. I'm going to say that tree is probably 200 to 230 years old up here on this ridge. But all these little trees indicate that there's not a whole lot of life. It's robbing the life out of this area. And I've cut trees like this, you know, 4, 5, 7 years ago. And when you do that, this ground just flourishes with new species, thriving species. You can see some, you know, there's some smaller, nice, straight pole red oak there that are starting to come up, but they're 60 feet away. There's nothing in that direction. That's all ironwood for maybe 80, 90, 100 feet before you get to an oak. There's a little cherry stick right there. You know, when I talked to a logger years ago when we looked at this property, he said, first thing I'd do is come in with a chainsaw and ring that tree. Just cut right through the bark and then just leave it, because he says it's too dangerous to cut. And it's doing nothing but sucking the life out of the place. And you know, there is truth to that. When you cut a tree down like that, of course I wouldn't let anything go to waste on it. I'd mill all that big stuff up, and anything that I could get out of the rest of the branches I'd use for firewood. All those branches, when you cut them off, that's all time release fertilizer. The massive root system in here, which is choking the life out of all these other trees, not allowing anything to really grow in here, that's going to start to decay and just fertilize everything that's going to want to come up here. And you know, 15, 20 years, there's going to be some nice sized trees in here. Probably come back and show you guys. Is it my goal to cut this tree down? Not right now. There's another one down the ridge here that got hit by lightning a few years ago. We will probably smoke it on out of here. So, dilemma: cut big trees, leave big trees. I like to leave big trees because I walk through my forest and I love looking at just big old beauties like that. You know, that's the home for a lot of little animals. but sometimes they go. When you're managing your own forest, you've got to come up with the decision of what it is that you want to do. Do I want to create a nice, healthy ecosystem in here where I can come in and log every 10 years? Yep, I want to do that because that pays for my taxes, right? And everything else. So that's a legitimate goal. This whole ridge is full of nothing but this ironwood. Good burning, hard to cut, hard on the chainsaws, but they're not that dandy. Here's this other big red oak that got hit by lightning. I'll show you that real quick. I came in here once in the spring. There was still about 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. And the storm had gone through and it got hit by lightning. There was bark all over the place. This big boy took it. Shaved this bark right off it. See that? Split that tree all the way up. Now this is a good candidate for knocking down, for sure. It's gonna die. But you know what? It is what it is. If I decide to take it down, we need some wood, we'll do it. If not, we'll leave it here. Let it decay, let it do its thing. But that's it, boys and girls. Thanks for hanging out here with me. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Stay tuned, we got some cool vids coming up.